Hello, and welcome to the overview of simplified accountable structure. I'm sure you're wondering what simplified accountable structure is. And this is intended to give you a bit of an introduction. It will take more than a few minutes, obviously, to truly understand it. So again, this is just a simple overview, and I hope that you'll dive deeper into this in the coming days and months if you actually pursue this model. First of all, it is both a simplified structure and also an accountable leadership structure. But before you do anything, you want to start with what's the why? Why do you even want to think about a new structure for your church? You know, a typical church is driven by a structure, meaning a structure is usually the calendar, your finances or your budget, the facilities or real estate in general, or how decisions are made. All four of those items, calendar, real estate, finances, and how decisions are made, all make up structure. And most churches are driven by an accumulation of those structure rather than being driven by the church's mission and vision. And when we do that, we're typically in decline. So the why should start with something other than we don't have enough people to fill our traditional structure, or we just want fewer meetings. Now, believe me, those are two good reasons to consider simplified accountable structure, but I sure hope those aren't the only reasons that you're considering simplified accountable structure. Because the real opportunity in considering simplified accountable structure is both those technical reasons of fewer meetings and fewer people to have to fill those administrative roles. But the greater opportunity are for those adaptive changes, the change in conversation that are going to get us back to being missionally focused, into reaching new people for Christ. You see, the problem with most of our structures is it actually promotes disunity. It enables dysfunction. It takes so long for decisions to be made. So many stops on the decision train, if you will. The perfect example is sometimes somebody comes up with a great idea, such as, let's move our Easter egg hunt off-site so that people in the community might be able to participate, and we might be able to build new relationships with new people. Somebody might come up with that decision in January thinking we have plenty of time. But by the time they go through all of the committees to get permission to do so, they are given full permission by July. And you guessed it, yeah, Easter happens long before July. Other problems with our structure is many times we have clear lines of authority, but often we have no clear lines of accountability. And oftentimes all of our responsibilities are on the shoulders of our pastor, but we oftentimes don't give that same authority to our pastor. And with all of our layered committees, it's really hard to make timely decisions. And this was made really apparent in our times of COVID when we needed to make quick and timely decisions. Most of our structures focus on maintenance, maintaining status quo, or it focuses on personal preferences rather than it focuses on the mission, our mission of making disciples, also referred to as the Great Commission. It's why every church exists. And when's the last time we talked about in your council meeting, how are we doing at making disciples? And are we making the appropriate shifts in our ministries so that we're more effective in making disciples? Well, there is a better way. And we refer to it as simplified accountable structure. And you're able to do this under our polity, our book of discipline, under paragraph 247.2 in our book of discipline in the 2016 edition. Our 4 current administrative teams, referred to as our Finance Committee, Trustees Committee, Staff Parish Relations Committee, and the Church Council, those 4 administrative teams, they cease to exist as we know them now, and instead they're combined into one unified leadership board. Now, those responsibilities, of course, don't go away. One unified leadership board comes together with 9 people. Those 9 people are in 3 classes. Of those 9 people, one is identified by the nominations committee. You still have to have a separate nominations committee. One of those 9 will be your lay leader. One of those 9 will be the lay member to annual conference. And if you have United Methodist men and women, and of course your youth, could also be one of those 9 people. As also part of this shift, there is a change in the nominations process because this is accountable leadership. We're looking for our most mature disciples to be at that table, rather than the traditional secular experience that we're looking for. And so we work with the nominations committee to be working in different ways to discern that leadership and have even conversations with potential leaders before nominating them. All of this can be found in our Mission Possible book, which is a guide to help walk through the discernment, equipping, and the implementation of this model. This new simplified accountable structure has 4 main areas of responsibility: stewardship of the church assets, generative responsibilities, strategic responsibilities, and accountability to the mission. Not day-to-day management, but governance. Most often we find that no one is doing the governance work in the life of the church. And that's why so many of our churches are in decline, is because we're not doing that governance work, the big picture, the questions of accountability of how are we doing in leading people to know Christ. So the meeting agenda has to change. It's no longer about reading reports to one another. And so because the meeting agenda changes, the conversation at the table changes. And friends, this is the only way for those adaptive changes to occur that gets us from this maintenance to governance mode. So it's not just about simplification, but it's also about accountable leadership. What does that mean? In accountable leadership, it ties together responsibility and authority and accountability. Now, all churches really should be practicing accountable leadership. And some churches, the simplified accountable structure is the right model for them. But no church should be practicing simplified structure without accountability. In accountable leadership, ministry is done by members and attenders with focus on the people that are yet to be gathered first. See, when we have so many people tied up in the administration, the business of the church, it leaves few to actually do the ministry, the most important part. That's the beauty of this model, is more people are freed up to do ministry. Management is done by staff through equipping and coordination. They identify, equip, and deploy. Now, some of you say, well, we don't have staff, we're a small church. Well, you do, they just happen to be unpaid. So anyone leading a ministry area, we refer to as staff, just unpaid staff. The pastor leads in this model through vision, direction, and teaching, and the governance is done by this consolidated leadership board through accountability and support. And they align and leverage the assets of the church so that the mission and vision are accomplished through the core values. So, if this is something that you're interested in, recommend that you pick up a copy of Mission Possible. Make sure you pick up that third edition. It's the most complete edition that has just come out in July of 2021. It is now formatted in the 3 phases of, again, discernment, equipping, and implementing. It's the most up to date. Many of the recommendations that we started with a decade or more ago are no longer the best practices and recommendations. We've learned over the years by walking alongside hundreds of congregations and thousands of leaders, better practices. We no longer have many of those same recommendations, such as representatives. There are many things like work teams that are now recommended. We're giving you agenda, and we're giving you rhythms for best practices for leadership teams to practice throughout the year, and so on. So make sure you have the latest Mission Possible resource to work with. We also have certified simplified accountable structure coaches. Make sure you have a certified simplified accountable structure coach so that they're up to date on the latest practices as well. They will walk you through the discernment process. There's 12 steps in the discernment process. And the discernment process is in companionship, in partnership with your district superintendent. So we ask that you get in contact with your district superintendent when you're exploring. Don't wait until you are ready to go into the model, but be in conversation with your district superintendent when you are exploring even the model, so that you can go through all 12 steps of discernment. We find that too many churches were kind of hurrying up the process, and therefore they weren't getting a good start. And transparency and communication and information was not shared well. And so there was distrust in the model by the congregation to begin with. So just do yourself a favor and go on and partner with your DS to begin with, and make sure you get a copy of those 12 steps in the discernment process to help you along your way. Make sure your nominations is in the process as well, so that they're well informed and equipped in the new way of simplified accountable structure too. Also, if you do go ahead, make sure that your leadership board, your new leadership board in the new model, gets well equipped so that they have a strong start as well. So if there's anything that we can do for you, please let us know. But again, you can pick up a Mission Possible book as your reference from Market Square Publishing or Amazon or Cokesbury. So feel free to do that. But also you can reach out to me at kcotan.com/SAS, SAS. I hope that this has been helpful in understanding a little bit more about simplified accountable structure.